Hello, hello. Plenty of buttons to press here at Wealth Coffee Chat Central, but morning, folks. Good to see you. A few of you up early, as always. James in the house. How are you, mate? Got Aaron there too. Jeff, good to see you, mate. Alison, good morning. Got Kelly there, and we got Mick. How are you, Mick? I think we're catching up today, isn't it, Mick? Catching up today, Mick. All right. I hope you're all well, team. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. Do the warm-ups while things are getting going. Jason Witten's my name, as you might already know. But if you're new, say hello. Let us know in the chat where you are, where you're from, those sorts of things. Give us a shout out. Say a quick something. Anyway, wherever you are, we've got Lorelli and there's Deb all the way from Newey, and whoever a few of the Facebook users are. Morning to you. And Debbie. Howdy, team. Anyway, there you go, folks. Few of you online, which is awesome. Thanks for joining me for this weird and wonderful thing we do each morning, Wealth Coffee Chat. I've been a property investor well over 20 years and done a few things. In the mornings, we get together, have a little coffee, have a little yarn, have a little chat about the idea of property investing and, staying on track. That's the idea. So welcome along. Welcome along. Thought today we might talk about a little bit of something about debt. Hey, yesterday, what was the good news yesterday? Well, tentative good news anyway. What happened yesterday? Oh, what didn't happen yesterday? Folks, put it in the chat. What did not happen yesterday when it comes to the world of lending, borrowing, interest rates, cash? The cash rate did not go up. The RBA on hold. Good news, 3 months in a row. So I reckon, the idea, the thought in and around the general marketplace, folks, is that she'll hold here for a little bit. There might be a rude one last punch in the face, depending on what happens with the inflation. And then sometime early 24, team folks, telling you, it's playing out. Nothing from Dan. Well, hopefully he gets kicked out anyway. Listen, as it's playing out, 2024 interest rates will reduce, if not beforehand, depending on what mayhem, rolls out in this next 6 months. The Dan Andrews of the like. And folks, we will be kicked off and kicked into the next significant property run from 24 onwards, folks. So for those who may have been sitting around umming and ahhing and you could be on a property deal, don't muck around, telling you. But that's not what this morning's about anyway. I'll do one of those another time. This morning I wanted to talk to everyone about the idea of good debt and bad debt. So help me out this morning. I know a few of you have seen this before, but it's always good to go back and have a little review about the conversation about good debt and bad debt. And, a lot of us sometimes get convinced that paying principal and interest makes you wealthy. Now, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but what I'm going to say is, depending on who you are, if you are an investor, let's say your mum and dad at home right now, you have no other interest in creating wealth in the future other than sticking with your plan, which is go to work. And this is not a shot. This is not a cheap shot. This is perfectly fine. If you're just going to go to work each day, you're happy with what you're doing, you're happy to pay your home off, you're happy to put a little bit of money in super, and that's going to be the maximum of what you're up to. Absolutely, for sure, 100%, pay your home off as quick as you can. For the rest of us, for those who are on this call, that is actually not going to help you become wealthy. Matter of fact, paying off debt, and specifically good debt, we're going to talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about that in a minute. Paying off debt makes someone else wealthy, significantly wealthy. The wealthiest businesses in this country, or some of them, tell me, paying off good debt, investment debt, makes who wealthy? Folks, tell me who becomes wealthy when you pay off debt. Hey, good morning, Rodney. And we've got Sonny. Morning to you. Innocent. Morning to you. Who becomes wealthy when you pay off debt, folks? Put that in the chat for me. Put that in the chat for me. All right, let's talk about bad debt. Yep, absolutely, 100%. The banks become wealthy when you pay off debt. And what we're going to talk about today is the type of debt that they become wealthy from. And this is where the understanding needs to be sought out. Okay, righto. Let's talk about bad debt. Put it in the chat for me what you think bad debts are, the type of debts bad debts are. Now, let's describe what this is first. A bad debt is this. A bad debt creates no income. It has no tax deductions, right? Deductions, and it goes down, whatever it's used for goes down in value or no increase in value. Okay. All right. Yeah. And we got this. Okay. Here we go. Car loans. Okay. Let's test this. It bought a car. It has no income. It's got no tax deductions if you bought a car to drive around in, and it goes down in value. Lately, the cars have been going up in value, but listen, any debt that you aren't making income from, dead right, Rose, right? Car loans, credit card, your credit card, credit cards. So, you end up buying furniture or clothing or things like that. Don't do it, folks. Bad debt. This is the crack cocaine. Listen, I say this to be a little bit offensive and up in your face. Like, it is an addiction. Bad debt is an addiction that the banks are happy to get you hooked on, folks. Happy to get you hooked on. Bad debt is why most people end up poor. Most people end up retiring in a terrible financial situation because we are socialized either directly or indirectly to think that bad debts are good. Get your car loan, get your credit card. You've made it. You've made it if you can qualify for a credit card. I've heard this bullshit before. Oh, quickly, get a credit card as soon as you can because then you get a good credit rating. This is not America, folks. This is not America. This is Australia, and that's bullshit. Don't do it. Credit cards are hideous. They're crack cocaine for your financial health, once you get addicted to bad debts, that type of debt, it is very difficult to get off it. So don't start. And if you are in there, cut your bloody credit card up. Get rid of it. Car loans, credit card, anything that has no income, no tax deductions, goes down in value. If you borrow money to buy those things, that is bad debt, and it is a terrible idea. Terrible idea, folks. Terrible idea. For most of us, we should be using cash if we want to buy those things. Cash created, let's be honest, from an asset, which is a renewable income stream. We'll talk about that another day. So you get the gist, right? You don't want bad debts. They hold you back. We were doing this last night. We had a bit of a catch-up, a webinar last night. Bad debt. A $10,000 credit card reduces someone's ability to borrow $50,000, right? And you don't even need to have the credit card. It could be at zero. The balance could be zero, and your ability, it reduces your ability to borrow $50,000 or more sometimes, folks. And that means you miss out on things that you might want to do, which is buy a good investment property. What's a good debt? Well, a good debt, where you borrow money, brings in an income. So it creates an income. It goes up in value. Value increases. So income, value, and often brings in some tax deductions. Now, tax deductions aren't the be-all and end-all here, but, it's good to have them if they're available. So income, value, tax deductions. All right. A rental property. I like it. Property. Debt that you qualify for to buy a property. Fantastic. Wonderful. Lovely. But this is where the nuance comes in, folks. The nuance comes in with this stuff. Good debt, bad debt. In the middle, there's this hybrid. This is rental properties, other investments often, depending on whether you can borrow for shares or businesses or other things, investments. Now, there are some very wealthy people around the world who say, I never use any of my own cash for anything. I always borrow all the money. And there's some interesting truth and some facts around that when you analyze the numbers. In the middle, there's this kind of hybrid. There's this debt in the middle, which is your principal place of residence, right? And it can swing each way. It can go one way or the other. Your home, because it doesn't produce an income, right? And it doesn't have any tax deductions, right? But it does go up in value. And it is a tax-deductible capital gain asset in the future, so no capital gain. So, quick question: how do you make your principal? How does your principal place of residence become a good debt in comparison to maybe being a bad debt? You can actually make that happen as well. Okay, so the question is, how do you do that? Also, right? Use the equity. Boom, Tim, you're on it. And use the equity. There are very good techniques and strategies when it comes to use the equity to buy other assets. Equity recycling. All sorts of stuff. So make sure you talk to your coaches and your teams to make sure that works. If you're not using the equity in your home, then it sits on the bad debt side. Okay, that's where it sits. If you're using the equity in your home, it sits more on the good debt side because it's actively creating something for your future. Okay, good debts and bad debts. All right, so let's talk about this concept and let's dive into this process. Let's say, and let's analyze, let's say, one property. Okay, over time, let's say from 0 to 20 years. You want that property to kind of look like that. It goes up in value. And depending on what we do, let's say the debt stays exactly the same. And let's say the rents, okay, go up in value as well, right? So that's your rents. This is your value. And this is your debt, right? Now, the traditional version of the world is this, where you go, oh, I want my debts to go down, and I want to pay my debts off, and that creates some value and some wealth in here, and the answer is that is valid. It creates some value in here, creates some wealth in here, but we can create that wealth in there without in a way where we pay the debts or offset the debts a bit better. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what this looks like and how we go. All right. So I'm going to use the calculator, the spreadsheet, just to demonstrate some conversations about if you go ahead and pay debt down, who's winning, who gets the most out of this debt reduction, principal and interest, and who gets the least out of it, folks, as we go, right? So I just put into the calculator here. For those who are in our coaching and mentoring program, you guys will have seen this already. This is our calculator, and you sit down with your coach, put together your portfolio, all right? And there's some calculators here that we use to do some tracking, do some forecasting, et cetera, et cetera. So let's say you purchased a property, call it 650. You're using equity to buy that property. There's some costs, stamp duty, insurances, et cetera. You've got some rates, insurance, yada, yada. Rent the property out. Now, over here, loan to value ratio, we're borrowing 105% because we're using some equity in our own home. That's smart. If you don't need to use the cash, then don't at this point in time. You got some rent coming in, and has some people who are earning income in that family. We've got some depreciation and some growth. CPI 3% over the long term, 3 to 4%. Average capital growth 5%. The average has been 7 to 10%, depending on where you are. So we're being conservative. And the average rent growth, anywhere between 3 and 4%. So put that in there, but put that in there and just as you think about it, you can adjust those figures either way. But the point is this, right? So let's go and have a look at this conversation here. Here's our property, and it has how it's running over time, right? It's running over a period of time. We buy it today, and as we go through, we're looking at where does the principal go? So for the first 5 years, what do we do, team? Put it in the chat. You guys know the drill. As a minimum, for the first 5 years of a loan for most of us, especially investors, we put it on interest only. Doesn't mean we can't make an extra payment. Tell me in the chat, interest only, but if we want to make an extra payment, where do we put it, team? Where do we put it? Interest only. Boom, Tim. And if you've got extra money, if you've got extra payments, then you put it in the offset account, right? Offset, or worst case scenario, redraw, but offset is a lot easier. Boom, Allison, away we go, right? So this is the concept. This is the idea. If you weren't doing that, let's say you were building up, and I'm just going to change down here. I'm just going to change this to P&I. I'm going to change that to P&I, and I'm going to change this to 30. And let's have a look at the repayments, okay? So the annual interest, this is the loan down the bottom here, folks. If you stick with me, we'll work through this a little. So if it was a principal and interest payment straight off the bat, then you'd make a pretty significant amount of payments here, $57,000 in payments, okay? Which is you've got a principal repayment, and you've got not cumulative, sorry, folks. The principal repayment, and you've got the interest repayment, okay? So you pay for the principal and you pay for the interest, okay? So if you look at how much extra principal you're paying over that 5-year period, let's say whatever that might be, that adds up to a fair amount, $50,000 or $60,000. Now, if you wanted to get that $50,000 or $60,000 back, if you paid that directly off the loan, if you paid it into the bank's balance sheet, not your balance sheet, right? Then you have to ask for it back. You have to go, oh, can I have it back? You have to apply for a loan. You have to jump through hoops. That can be a bit challenging sometimes, depending on the situation. Imagine, 2 years ago you qualified and today you don't qualify. A lot of people have been caught in that situation of late, where they had heaps of equity in their property. They didn't unlock it or lock that equity in, access to it, 2 years ago. Now the interest rates have gone up and they can't qualify to unlock that equity in their property. Okay. So let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at what might happen if we change this back to interest only. Okay. Put that to 5. Oh, now there's a bug in the software. All right, let's see. If we were to change that back to interest only, then we would be able to see the interest only. Beautiful. The repayments or interest is $25,000. 25 grand. The interest is the tax deductible portion, right, folks? If you pay principal off a loan, so you pay more money throughout the year off of a loan, especially a investment loan, tell me, do you get a tax deduction on paying extra principal, right? Tell me in the chat, do you get a tax deduction on paying extra principal off the loan? Interest is a tax deductible. Principal, no, you don't, right? So what happens is this: we get convinced that we should, as investors, or maybe often, we should not only pay the interest, right? So the interest, so we pay the principal, which is extra money. So we don't get any, there's no tax deductions. No tax deductions on, no tax deductions on the principal, right? So remember when we said what's a good debt and what's a bad debt? A good debt brings in the rent, it gets you a tax deduction, and it grows in value. It grows in value. Now, if you were to now make extra payments on principal, the money that you're investing in that property, you're no longer getting, you're putting money into the principal and you're not getting a tax deduction for it. So then you put money into the principal over here, you don't get a tax deduction, and it's not easily accessible, okay? So that's when, as investors, we need to be smart about what we're doing with our lending and our payments, all right? If you left that payment as interest only, if we go back here, if you left that payment as interest only and we run that out for quite a while, let me see here. Interest only. So let's put that as interest only for 25 years, right? So if we put that as interest only, what happens when we run that out over time, right? So if we go out to year 20 over here, now we've still got the balance, the same amount of loan that we owed, $685,000, but our loan to value ratio has dropped because our values have gone up, okay? So we're still creating wealth. We might even have money sitting in an offset account, folks. We might even have money sitting in an offset account, still offsetting the amount that we pay when it comes to the interest, but you've still got access to your cash and your capital, right? So the point, probably the takeaway from today's chat is when we're looking at good debt versus bad debt, just be cognizant of if we end up in a place or a space where we think we're going to pay our debts off, make sure that you have a chat to your coach and make sure it's the right thing to do. How you're paying them off and when is really important. If you pay them off too early, you get locked up. You get caught with servicing. You get caught with access to capital. You get caught with cash flow. Often paying the debts off later, let's say down here, might be a good tick in the place or space to do it. Anyway, there you go. Good debt, bad debt. Make sure you understand the difference, folks. Okay. That's it from me. I think we've gone well over today. Probably about another 20, 30 minutes an hour to drill into that, to be honest, to get down to the nitty gritty. But that's not what the Wealth Coffee Chats are about. The Wealth Coffee Chats are about simple, hopefully simple, daily chats about what's going on. So there you go. The point is, be aware of paying down debts using principal and interest. Who's that making wealthy? And is that actually benefiting you? Is it benefiting you? Yes or no? You need to understand the impact of that, and the timing of it needs to be right. All right, folks, that's it. Wealth Coffee Chat done and dusted. Let's have another one tomorrow if you're up for it. Let me know. Let me know. Around about 10 past 8, we'll get together, talk a little bit of what's going on in the market. Until then, you guys take care. Remember, this thing's a marathon, not a sprint. It takes some time to get this thing done. So make sure you stick to the plan. All right, folks, that's it. I'm done. See ya.